Hello, welcome to another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, March 27th. Hope everybody is having a good day so far, enjoying their week. Tomorrow is opening day in the MLB. A lot to be excited about if you're a baseball fan, especially if you're a New York Yankees fan, as they will begin their chase for 28 with Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and company leading the way. They will be in Houston tomorrow afternoon, 4 Eastern start. First pitch, Nestor Cortez versus Framber Valdez. And the New York Yankees will open up with a 4-game set in Houston and then 3 in Arizona. And then they'll be home next Friday, April 5th, for their home opener with Marcus Stroman on the mound. We've got a lot to discuss today. The Mets game, unfortunately, tomorrow got postponed, so they will now play on Friday, March 29th. They will have a 3-game series at Citi Field Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Milwaukee Brewers. Not a major change because that Friday was a scheduled day off anyway. A lot of times you see teams play Thursday opening day, day off Friday, and then you really get into the grind of things. Saturday really begins that grind of 162. But we got a lot to discuss today. We're going to break down the New York Yankees season preview, give you my thoughts, expectations, what to expect out of the New York Yankees this season. Is this the year for 28? It feels like forever now. I mean, kind of forever now, really. Going on 15 years now, every single season since 2010. Coming off that 2009 World Series, we have been talking about the chase for 28. This is the beginning of the chase for 28. Every single season, we have said that from that 2009 World Series. So hopefully, finally, this year, we actually chase and get 28. And then next year, we're talking about chase for 29, which doesn't really rhyme, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But either way, massive year coming up for the Yankees. You go out and bring in Juan Soto. You say you're all in. You got to be all in. You got to play like you're all in. And this team's got to get back to the playoffs, number one, and they've got to make a deep run. None of this getting to the playoffs, early exits, losing to the Astros every year. None of this pathetic garbage that has happened within this organization really for a couple years now, but most recently, these last couple seasons, 2-3 years where you've seen a lot of the incompetence, a lot of the frustrations that the fans have with this organization really come out into the light where a lot of people have seen it. Now, before we get to my full season preview, what to expect, expectations, roster breakdown, all that good stuff, the New York Yankees did actually make a trade today. So a little trade before, about just a little over 24 hours from first pitch. The New York Yankees made a trade. Brian Cashman was working the phones. Aaron Boone actually just spoke to the media at the time of this recording about 15 minutes ago. He just spoke to the media, and he said how the roster right now isn't completely set. There still could be some minor tweaks by the 4 p.m. Eastern first pitch tomorrow, but mostly what you see on paper is what you're going to see tomorrow and what you're going to see moving forward. But the one final big, I guess not splash, but the one final move that the New York Yankees did made was acquiring Jon Berti from the Miami Marlins in a 3-team deal that includes the Yankees, the Rays, and the Marlins. So to break the deal down before we get into what Jon Berti brings to the table, because again, then we'll get to my expectations and all that good stuff. The Marlins get John Cruz from the Yankees, a prospect, I believe 28th ranked prospect, and then the Rays send the Marlins Shane Sasaki, one of their prospects as well. The Rays receive Ben Rortvedt. So Rortvedt is no longer a Yankee. He will now head to the division rival Tampa Bay Rays. It really didn't seem like there was much of a spot for him there. Obviously, with Trevino, you of course have Wells as well. So he was mainly just a AAA guy. Really didn't have much of a spot. Was never very good. He'll move on to Tampa. And then the Yankees get Jon Berti, who of course is the very versatile Jon Berti. Bring him on over. Played 131 games last year. Can play third base. Can play second base. Can play shortstop. And this was actually a need for the Yankees because this was a team that unfortunately will see DJ LeMahieu on the injured list for the first couple weeks of the season. He will hit the injured list to start the 2024 campaign, which is obviously something that's very frustrating. Injuries have been really rattling his last 3 seasons, really. And you've seen him drop off in his production. After that 2020 campaign, you've seen kind of a consistent drop-off in his production over the last 3 seasons, and a lot of it's been injuries. Some of it seems to be a little bit of age as well. It seems that he's kind of hitting the end of his prime at a very rapid pace as opposed to other players. In sports, any sport, whether it's baseball or anything else, there's guys that kind of hit the end of the road quicker than others. DJ LeMahieu seems like he's a guy that's kind of hitting the end of the road in a very rapid pace. There is guys that have this slow decline, and then there's guys that have really good season, and then 1 year it's just the end. A lot of guys you could kind of see it declining. For DJ LeMahieu, it's like he had a couple really good seasons. 2019 was amazing. 2020 was great. All these great things, and then boom, injuries happened, couple poor seasons, and it's like he's not even close to the same player we saw. So with him on the injury list, the New York Yankees had to make a move. You were expecting a move. You bring in Jon Berti here, very versatile, can play the left side of the infield, which was an issue for the Yankees last year. It also brings a little bit more experience. He's 34 years old, been in the league for a little while. 2018 played 4 games with Toronto, but most recently the prime of his career has come with the Marlins. 6 total seasons in the MLB, 5 of those in Miami. He played 131 games last year, had his best season last season with Miami, had a slash line of 294, 344, 405, OPS of 748, had a 2.5 WAR, put together a really nice campaign. Versatile. You would most likely see him and Oswaldo Cabrera here over the next really couple weeks until DJ LeMahieu comes back into the fold. They're going to be him and Oswaldo are going to be the platoon at third base. And it's good to have Berti in. It's good to have a veteran. It's good to have a guy with a little bit more of a track record. His career, he's hit 258, 337, 368 slugging, and an OPS of 705 in his career. He's played a total of 434 games played. So you heard that J.D. Davis might have been in the mix from San Francisco. You've seen, some of these other guys that, kind of got thrown into the mix of possible late spring, early season additions that the New York Yankees could bring in to soften the blow of losing LeMahieu to start this season. And Berti was one of those guys at the top of his list because he was very productive last season. He's been very productive, veteran, had some consistent last year, coming off of a career year. So you look at now a platoon at that third base spot with Oswaldo and Berti most likely to start the season. Aaron Boone did say today, with travel, Berti coming over, they're not sure if he'll be ready to go by tomorrow, but you'll definitely see him this weekend and obviously over the course of the season with the Yankees. And it's a 2-year deal as well. You get him on a 2-year contract, so we'll see kind of how long this plays out. But Berti to the Yankees, good. Talk about last-second move for the Yankees. It feels like that. Just a little over 24 hours, about 30 hours from opening day. Brian Cashman works the phones and gets Jon Berti to the New York Yankees. So you'll see a platoon there at third base on the left side of the infield that hopefully you see a little bit better production offensively specifically this season. Also, Peraza going down. So you've already had some injuries there to the left side. It's already thin. So it was a move that has to be made. So that's the stuff on Berti. Now you head on over to the New York Yankees and what they need to do this season as a whole. Look, last year was a disaster. I mean, the amount of times that I came on this podcast last season and ranted after each series, after each game. It felt like for a while there, it was just Groundhog Day. Like after every single Yankee game, I came on the next morning and I was ranting about something different because the New York Yankees last year were a bad, pathetic, gross baseball team. And the reason I say that specifically, because they were so bad, they found new ways to lose every game. And I remember coming on here just about every single day talking about the new ways they found to lose. Like they couldn't hit one day, then it's the bullpen, then it's like, it was such a disaster. There was only really 2 guys that you could take away from last season. Garrett Cole with the Cy Young and Aaron Judge, who, when he was healthy, was dominant. Those are the only 2 guys last season that you could completely rely on. Everybody else had their flaws, had their issues. It was a disaster, one of the worst offenses we've ever seen, one of the worst offenses the league has seen in 20-plus years. That's how bad they were. 82-80, you missed the playoffs, you finished 4th in the AL East, you finished 19 games back of 1st in the AL East. It was a disaster. You go into the offseason, you get the big fish. You don't settle for Cody Bellinger, you don't settle for anybody else, one of these platoon outfielders. No, you go out, get an outfielder, bring in Juan Soto, you also bring in Alex Verdugo, You also bring in Trent Grisham, who's the depth guy in that outfield. You add that to Aaron Judge. You add that to a lineup that also includes Rizzo, a lineup that includes Stanton, a lineup that includes Volpe, who you hope only can get better and hope that can produce a lot more on the offensive side of things this year at the plate, where he had a very streaky up and down season, a lot of lows last year, but was expected for Volpe. Played a lot of games. Was very inconsistent. Had some growing pains. He'll still have growing pains, but you hope he can start to work out of it. Saw what he could do defensively, won a Gold Glove, did a lot of good things there, inconsistency on offense, but you expect him to only get better. Prospect, a lot of pressure playing shortstop for the New York Yankees. Struggles are expected. You expect him to only get better. So you look at this team now, and they are a lot better. Now, I know they only really made that one move, and the pitching staff is a concern. They only brought in Soto. They didn't go out and strike a trade for a number 2 starter in a Blake Snell or even a Jordan Montgomery who just signed with the D-backs yesterday for a very low price, cheap price. So you did see some of those pitchers. You saw Corbin Burns go inside your own division as he lands with the Orioles as they now get a legitimate ace for their staff to solve one of their problems last year. I get the pitching concern, but on paper, this is a team, to just put it straight up, should win easily 90-plus games and should easily be able to roll out of bed and make the playoffs. Easily. You've got Juan Soto. You brought in Soto. You brought in Verdugo, who I really like. I think he's one of the kind of silent, underrated players. I think Yankees fans are going to fall in love with Verdugo. You, of course, add that to a group of players that you already had in Judge. And you bring back, it feels like Rizzo in a way missed a good portion. He did miss time last season, but even when he was back and playing, it feels like Rizzo really missed time from like June to the rest of the year. So you hopefully finally now get a healthy Rizzo, because even when Rizzo, quote unquote, said he was healthy, he wasn't. He admitted to it. He was struggling to see the ball. He had, issues with the concussion. He still had the concussion. He still had problems from the neck issues. He still had those problems from when he got hit by Fernando Tatis at first base. So you finally get a healthy Rizzo. When Rizzo's healthy, he was a guy that was batting .300 last year. This was a guy that was on his way to making the All-Star game, had one of the highest batting averages in the league. So if you can get that Rizzo back, you add that to Judge, you add that to Soto, you add that to Verdugo, you like that group of guys. Stanton's still a big unknown for me. He still is, because you just don't know what you're going to get out of Giancarlo Stanton. A guy that can go out there and hit 3 home runs any given night. He can also go out there and strike out 4 times and go through a stretch where he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, there is a stretch where Giancarlo Stanton will look like the most powerful, biggest baseball player, best baseball player on the planet. He'll go through a 2-week stretch where he is dominating, you can't stop him. And then he'll go through a 2-week stretch where he looks like he just got called up from single A, and he doesn't have no business being in the MLB. So you hope you can get a more consistent Stanton. At this point in his career, I think Stanton is what he is. He's injury-prone. He's inconsistent. That's just the player he is. But that's one of the biggest X factors to me, and I've talked to a lot of people about it. If Giancarlo Stanton can be Giancarlo Stanton of old, or even Giancarlo Stanton of 2022, where he made the All-Star game, the possibility of this team not only making the playoffs, but getting to a World Series, going deep into the postseason, increases by so much if Giancarlo Stanton could just give you what he was in 2022. The first half of 2022, he was amazing. Went to the All-Star game. I know the second half kind of fell apart a little bit, but the entire Yankees did. I mean, the month of August in 2022 was a disaster. The entire team had problems in the second half of that season, not just Stanton. Last year was terrible from Giancarlo Stanton. And then you mix the injuries into it as well, it doesn't help. But if you have a lineup now where you finally have some balance, you finally go out and get a lefty in Juan Soto, a generational talent. All right, we don't need to talk so much about Juan Soto. We know what Juan Soto brings offensively and defensively. The guy's a generational talent. He's one of the best players, arguably the best player in baseball. I don't want to hear all the nonsense of, next year. And that's going to be the problem, though. It's all year you're going to hear. If Soto plays great, it's going to be, extend him. Are they going to extend him? What's going to happen? It's pathetic. I find it hilarious, all these Mets fans that are already talking about next year. We're going to get Soto next year. Like, that is so sad. that you're already talking about next season and opening day of 2024 hasn't even happened yet. We haven't even thrown a pitch, minus the Padres, Dodgers, and Korea. But the rest of the league hasn't even thrown a pitch that actually counts, and we're already talking about 2025. Pathetic. Just shows you how they feel about this season. But Soto's a generational talent. But if Stanton can be that guy, can be that 2022 version, or even something near that, the lineup gets so much more lethal, and you look at this lineup and you try and find the weaknesses. Your 3 through 5 in this lineup or 2 through 5 rather, is just dangerous. If you're looking at this lineup, you're saying, all right, Gleyber right now is leadoff. Let's say when LeMahieu's back, he leads off. But for tomorrow, Gleyber's leadoff. Boone's already revealed it. Gleyber leading off tomorrow. Soto batting second, most likely. Judge third. Rizzo, let's say 4, Stanton 5. Those guys are interchangeable. You can also say Volpe 7, Verdugo 6, or Volpe 6, Verdugo 7. Those guys are kind of interchangeable. 8 is some mixture of Oswaldo or Birdie, and then 9's probably Trevino. But that core of Soto, Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, if Stanton's right, and especially Rizzo, if he's back to that Rizzo we saw before the Tatis incident last year, I mean, that's almost impossible for pitchers. You have 2 top 5 players at 2 and 3, and then you have one of the greatest power hitters of this generation, if he's back into form in Stanton, and you have Anthony Rizzo, who's known to work walks, can work counts, just an all-around solid baseball player has had a very, very, very solid career. Not great, he's solid. And we saw what he did last year. A guy that maybe can hit 300. That's dangerous. That is wicked. Now, if Stanton's the 198 version of Stanton and the Stanton we saw last year where he couldn't do anything, that's what you're going to get. Then you're going to get, all right, still, then you're going to have questions, because then one of your supposed biggest bats, if he's slumping, you're going to have those problems. But look, that 1-2 punch of Soto, Judge is going to be lethal as long as they're healthy. I know some people are concerned about Judge coming out of spring training. Oh, he didn't play a whole lot. All this stuff. Look, Judge is arguably the best player in baseball. This is a guy that does not need an entire spring to ramp up. I think he'll be perfectly fine. This is a guy that can roll out of bed and hit 50 home runs. And we saw him last year. He missed a ton of time, and if he would have stayed healthy, would have been on pace to potentially beat his record of 62 from what he set a year prior in 2022. So I have no worries with Judge. I think Judge actually in this lineup is probably the person you trust the most, because he's been the only Yankee that has consistently hit over the last 3 seasons or so. And now you add another guy that's very consistent in Juan Soto. So a lot to like there from this lineup overall. Obviously, Soto to the mix is huge. Stanton's big X factor. Really like what Verdugo brings as well. Bottom of the order as well. You kind of want to strengthen that up. Bottom of the order, set up the top of the order, get some of the contact guys. But just the lefties in general. Having Soto in that lineup, lefty. Obviously, Rizzo being fully healthy, a lefty. Soto, of course, we know what he does health-wise. Lefty. Played all 162 games. So just finally, after all these years, the Yankees went out and got lefties. They went out and got lefties in a lineup that was dominated by righties. I don't know why it took so long, but it did. And that's where you can kind of see this balance. You can kind of move some pieces around. You can put Verdugo at 6. You can put Verdugo at 7. You can kind of mix and match the way you want to go with Rizzo and Stanton. I like the whole idea of lefty, right. The Yankees truly now can go righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty with Gleyber, Soto, Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, Verdugo, Volpe. Your 7 guys you can legitimately go righty, lefty, righty, lefty. And obviously Oswaldo there as well, who can do it from both sides. So you have that. You really have that. That versatility, that righty-lefty match, which we haven't seen a whole lot of. So, look, this team's got to make the playoffs. I mean, that's a given. That's obvious. If they don't make the playoffs, I mean, you can make the argument too that it's got to be World Series or bust. It feels like that every year, but with the future of Juan Soto, you don't know. I mean, I think he'll come back as a Yankee, but in an all-in year like they are this season, when you get Garrett Cole back, you can make an argument on paper this is one of the best rosters in baseball. They should easily be in the mix. So I think this team could easily win a division. Baltimore is obviously our biggest threat. I'm not scared of Toronto, not scared of Tampa, definitely not scared of Boston. I think Boston's going to be terrible this year, similar to what they were last year. When you look at this division, the biggest threat is Baltimore, like I just said. I still think this Yankee team, I think they can win 100 games. A lot of the simulations, a lot of the projections have them in the range of 96 to 99. I could definitely see them going 99 and 63. I could certainly see them eclipsing 100 wins. You know, I think them and Baltimore are a little bit different. Baltimore is a little bit of that younger team. You have still some question about Baltimore's bullpen. I guess you could say the same about the Yankees. They're both very talented rosters. Because even when you look at the top of the Yankees staff, when Garrett Cole's healthy, you love what he brings. Cy Young. Same thing with Corbin Burns in Baltimore. But the rest of the staff, you can say you have questions with both. So it's going to be a good battle between the two. Biased, I could say the Yankees would win the division, but at the end of the day, Baltimore, this is a team that took home the division last year. You could still make the case that it's their division to lose, and the New York Yankees still have to stay healthy and they have to prove themselves, and they've already been banged up. LeMahieu hurt, Cole hurt, two guys that play big roles on your team already down. So that obviously as well. Judge was banged up, so that obviously as well can also be put into account that this team is already banged up and we haven't even hit opening day, which seems to be kind of a common theme. And that's where you move over now to this rotation where you're going to see Nestor on the mound tomorrow. It's going to be Nestor, Rodon, Stroman, Schmidt, Luis Gil, who I'm very happy about. Luis Gil earned that spot. A really solid piece. We saw what he was able to do when he came in some spot start situations. Him, even Randy Vasquez, some of those guys obviously spent last year in the minors and did really good and came out into this spring with an opportunity to potentially make this roster, to potentially make this five starting, this 5-man rotation, and he earned it. Now, obviously, Cole going down certainly increased his chances, but guy's a flamethrower. Guy's got credible fastball, live arm, young, just a lot of good things. One of your top prospects, a lot to like from Luis Gil. You've also already seen him do some good things at the major league level. So happy about that. Look, I am concerned about the rotation. I'll admit I'm happy about Gil, but he's your fifth starter. You don't need Gil to be dominant. I'm concerned about the mixture for the first month or two of the season of relying on Nestor, Rodon, and Stroman to be your three. Like, the Yankees really don't have an ace right now. And I am worried that Nestor's good and all, but he wasn't great last year. I know he dealt with some injuries, but you can't rely on Nestor. Nestor being your open day starter isn't necessarily ideal. You still have questions about Rodon. Stroman, while I thought he did a lot of good things in spring, and while I do like what Stroman brings as a kind of a pitch to contact, ground balls guy, can get in and out of innings quickly, while I like that from Stroman, there are questions about how he's going to handle this market. Is he capable of being that number 3? Just how is Stroman, at times throughout his career, he's been inconsistent. Schmidt is Schmidt. You kind of know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to be a high 3s, low to mid 4 ERA guy, and Gil. Not a ton of pressure on those guys because they're your 4-5. Your main pressure is coming off the top. You're relying on 3 unknowns to carry you through the first month or two. You know what Schmidt is. Gil's your 5-man. Your 5th starter. You don't need him to be your ace. You just don't. If he can give you 5-6 innings every outing, you take that as your 5th starter. But at the top, Nestor wasn't great last year. Can you rely on him to eat up the innings and do what he did, in 2022? Rodon was awful last season. And Stroman, you have some questions on the field and off the field. While it seems like he's really embodied the Yankee mindset, you have to see how adversity hits. You always overall have to see, how he plays and how he pitches, because the minute he starts to struggle, how is that going to fare in a big market in New York with this fan base? So the rotations are concerned. You saw what the Giants and the Diamondbacks were able to pay for Jordan Montgomery. I mean, in an all-in year, you would like to see Cashman do that. He didn't. I'm not really overly surprised. The Yankees are going to rely on. The Yankees are going to be the Yankees. The Yankees have never really been a big team about regular season. They've never been big about the regular season. For the Yankees, it's always been about, as long as you're healthy for the playoffs, that's all that matters. And I think that's the Yankees' mindset. They can have average pitching for April and, a chunk of May. As long as you're good to go by June, July, and of course, once October rolls around, that's all this team really worries about, which is good and bad because we've seen the Yankees at times sometimes take the regular season. It seems lightly. The regular season doesn't mean a whole lot, but the Yankees have always been a team that if you're banged up at all, they're going to shut you down, kind of baby you a little bit, and that's, I think, their mindset is it's not like Cole's done for the year. If Cole would have been done for the year, knock on wood, isn't, you would have had to bring in a Blake Snell. You would have had to bring in a Jordan Montgomery because you could not roll an entire year with this rotation. This rotation can probably get by for a month or two, but not much longer than that. And I'll admit, there's probably going to be some really frustrating losses in the early parts of this season where the offense goes out there and scores 7 runs, but you lose 9-7, you lose 8-7 because you get a clunker from Schmidt or you get a clunker from Nestor, where you don't have that legitimate, consistent, number one reliable option. There's also going to be games where the Yankees just get outpitched. From a bullpen perspective, from a starting perspective, you might get Nestor go out there and throw 6 innings of 3 runs. The bullpen only allows 1, and they lose 4-2 because they face, Corbin Burns or somebody like that. There's going to be those games. So it's going to happen. It's going to be frustrating, but you just have to wait it out. Hopefully they can kind of tread that water. Once Cole comes back, you look at this rotation, you're like, all right, you got a Cy Young leading the way. You got your ace back, and that's huge. He single-handedly was the best player on the team. He carried the Yankees last year. He was the only Yankee that actually played the entire season and was consistent the entire season. Him and Judge. Judge didn't play the entire season. When Judge was out there, he was great. It was Judge and Cole. Other than that, everybody else had their problems. So, yeah, I'm pumped up for this season. I think the Yankees easily playoff team. On paper, they've got a roster. Yankees have always been a team, too, to do a lot at the deadline. If their pitching is mediocre to below average by the deadline, even when Cole's back and you're not seeing and Rodon's struggling, and let's say, maybe Schmidt's not doing a whole lot, and maybe Nestor's not having a very good season or whatever, this has always been a team that's shown their willingness to go out there and spend at the deadline. That's always kind of been the Yankees' thing. The first couple months are a trial. They've openly, publicly said it, that April they feel is an extended spring training. They've publicly admitted to it. They really don't take things too seriously until, May-ish, June, around that, once you get around the deadline, then, they just don't. That's just the way the Yankees roll. So we'll see. But, the deadline will be interesting to see if they pick up any more pitching. That's obviously all the way in July, August. You don't want to think about that right now, but it'll be interesting. And of course, the bullpen, you've got guys like Loaizaga, Canely, Clay Holmes leading the way. You also saw Birdie make the team. Clayton Beater, who I saw at Somerset a couple times, really, really like what he brings to the table. Caleb Ferguson as well, who they got over from L.A. So a couple new guys there, a couple guys that were great in spring training, got an opportunity with the Major League club. The bullpen, a little bit maybe, the bullpen a little bit, losing Wandy certainly hurts a little bit. It might scare you a little bit. I like Clay Holmes. I don't love him. I think there's better options, I think, out there, but he's serviceable. He's not bad in the closer role. When he's bad, he's really bad. Clay Holmes is that type of player where there's no in between. He'll go months without allowing a run and dominant, and then he'll go a couple weeks where he can't record outs. That's how bad it is for him sometimes. So he's a little shaky, but overall you could have much worse. So fired up. Looking forward to the season. We'll have a lot of content on here. I plan on doing a lot of post-series podcasts where I'll be recapping as many series as I can. So we'll have a lot of those here on the channel. And fired up. And I'll take the Yankees to win. Give me the Yankees to win the AL East. Because why not? I know it's Baltimore's division it feels to lose. But this is a team that added Juan Soto. I still think people don't quite understand. They look at it and say, Juan Soto was the only addition. I get that. And I still feel like they maybe left a little bit of meat on the bone. And I understand that 100%. Believe me, I've been very critical of the Yankees. But it's Juan Soto. It's not like the only move the Yankees made was Cody Bellinger. It's Juan Soto. This is a generational talent. This is one of the best players in baseball. It's a top 5 player in baseball. You have an outfield that consists of Alex Verdugo, who's very consistent. Good 270, 275 hitter, good defender. And then you have Soto, or Judge in center, and then you have Soto right. You have 2 top 5 guys in the outfield. 2 top 5 guys in batting 2 and 3rd in the order. Not many teams have that. The Yankees have that. And that's what's going to carry them this season. That's what's got to carry them this season. So I'm fired up. Now, you look at the pitching tomorrow. As I mentioned, Nestor Cortez will be on the bump. He'll face Framber Valdez. The home opener will be given to Marcus Stroman. I don't have much of a problem with it. I know some people were critical of Stroman not taking the ball. Look, I understand. I get the aspect of where people are coming from, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I think there could be a whole lot worse that Marcus Stroman could do than tell the Yankees and get his throwing path a little bit mixed up, which is what they've said there. His program, he was set up to pitch that Friday, was set up to pitch his scheduled starts, not to bump him up and pitch that, not to bump him up and pitch the opener against Houston. So I'm not going to crush Marcus Stroman for it. I actually kind of like it. He wants to go out there. He wants to be in front of the crowd. He wants the pressure right away. Home opener, a lot of pressure. Your second start as a Yankee, first in pinstripe. Pinstripes, you got to ball out. You got to go out there and dominate. So that'll do it for another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. We'll have a lot more content coming your way, as I've mentioned. We'll have post-series recaps. We'll definitely have a series recap after this series, so stay tuned. We will have plenty of content coming your way. Baseball is back. The Yankees are back. The Mets are back tomorrow. Well, actually Friday. So the Mets fans have to wait one more day. I've said it. I think the Mets are going to be a frisky team this year. I think the Mets are going to be better than what a lot of people think they're going to be. And we'll get into the Mets a lot this season. You know how this podcast goes. We talk basically like 90% baseball from now until September. Once football rolls around, we incorporate, of course, a lot of football. We always have a lot of football on this podcast, but the Yankees and Mets. And that's the greatest part of baseball season, is every single day you've got baseball. 162. That's the beauty of the grind of 162. Every day you've got baseball. Pretty much every day you can rely on the Yankees and Mets being on. Some days they both are off, but very rarely. At least you can always rely on at least one of them, if not both of them being on. So a lot of excitement there. Baseball is back. Fired up. Opening day is great. Enjoy opening day. Let's go Yankees. And as always, hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.